So this past week, SB 32 in New Mexico, the anti-trapping bill on public lands, passed the Senate and the House, which means that now it goes to the governor's desk for signature. It's probably likely that she's going to sign it. The governor sides with the House and sides with the Senate, so it makes sense that all trapping on public lands is now illegal. So let's talk a little truth. And I heard a lot of truth being said on the House floor as I watched the committee session. Unfortunately, the House vote went 35-34 in favor of moving it forward to be signed into law. So let's talk a little truth, and I'll use the words that came out of the anti-sides article about why this trapping bill was so important. They said that this bill was a bipartisan bill and that the majority of New Mexicans were for it. Unfortunately, the urban-rural divide in New Mexico really shows the urban-rural divide in this country, and unfortunately the bipartisanship was almost a 50-50 split along party lines to vote the trapping law to be legal, and for those to say no, trapping is an inherent part of wildlife management and traditions and heritage and all the things tied to who we are as hunters. So this bill was brought forward to protect outdoor enthusiasts, companion animals, wildlife, and all New Mexicans. That's pretty interesting. So the whole companion animal thing is where this whole thing got started. This thing was called Roxy's Law, and Roxy was a pet, a dog of someone in 2018 that got caught in a snare. And the owner itself couldn't free Roxy, and unfortunately, Roxy died. Now, if my pet died, I absolutely would be heartbroken too. Because of this archaic mass killing, they've also said that traps are indiscriminate. And certainly, there are some traps that do not know if it's a bobcat, a coyote, or a dog that's stepping on them. But there's a lot of other traps called dog-proof traps that are discriminant in terms of the fur bearer that you are trapping. So I think the language that was constantly used was that trapping is dangerous, trapping is cruel, trapping is archaic, trapping is brutal. None of the above, unfortunately. You see, back in the day, in the 50s, probably so. In the 50s, there were no swivels. There were traps that had big teeth on them. There were traps that were a lot more powerful. There were traps that were indiscriminate. But that's not what trapping is today. Trapping today saved wildlife across the US. Trapping today allows you to capture animals, keep them alive, and move them. Trapping, if I trap something that I do not want in the trap, like a bobcat, I can let it go. Trapping does not harm fur bearers. Trapping has triple swivels. Trapping has pads. Trapping has no longer any teeth tied to the traps. Just Google it. Just YouTube it. And you'll see a bunch of humans putting their hands and their feet in traps and it not hurting them. So let's talk to the consequences of this trapping law. And there's two consequences and they are intimately tied together. Consequence number one is that the only people that are legally able to trap in the state of New Mexico now, apart from the government and the state agencies, are Native Americans. Native Americans can trap on their land and they can trap on public land. So ostensibly, if you see a trap in New Mexico in the future, it will inherently be tied to the fact that Native Americans are the only ones that can trap on that land. Consequence number two, the fact that now you are banning trapping will mean that the urban interface will see an increase in human-wildlife conflict, specifically with animals that get trapped. What does that mean? It means that you're going to have illegal trapping of those animals occurring, which means you're likely going to see more companion animals now getting snared and trapped. And because those traps don't have any names or licenses associated with them, the finger is going to get pointed only at the individuals that now can legally trap in the state, which is not a good thing. I hope that the governor of New Mexico understands these two consequences of this law, because they're not good. So I'll end it like this. How did we get here? I think we got here because we have a perception problem. We have a PR problem in hunting. I think a lot of people would agree with that. How do we change a PR problem? Well, we start showing who we really are. We start communicating about what hunting is, what trapping is, what it does for wildlife, and what it does for the management and the well-being of ecosystems. That's it. That's what we got to do. If you like what we do, please continue to support us. We have a supporters program in which for the cost of a cup of coffee a month, you can get behind us and we can keep doing this thing that you are so appreciative of. For the cost of a cup of coffee a month, you can be eligible for all sorts of things. Hunts, knives, seasonings, you name it. I appreciate you. I appreciate you listening this far. I'm sorry, New Mexico. I'm sorry that it got this far.